So my name's Karen Young. I have been a jeweller for 10, 12, maybe 15 years. I've lost count. And more recently, I've started moving more into product and jewellery photography. So I've been exactly where you are. Actually, I don't know if this happens to you. On Facebook, you get time hop, and it takes you back so many years. Well, the very first photo I took about 11 years ago popped up on my time hop last night, and I was sat going, oh my God. But what that says is, instead of going, oh, how horrible was the photo, it's flipping on its head and looking actually how far I've come. And I think when, a lot of jewellers struggle with the photography of their jewellery, it's the most complicated type of photography there is. Things are small, things are shiny, and it can seem quite overwhelming when you come to it with not really knowing much about it. But what I want to do is reassure you that it's entirely possible to learn how to take great photos, even with your smartphone. What you just got to do is a little bit of planning in advance. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some equipment and tools that can help. There's a cheap way and an expensive way of doing things in photography, the same way there is with jewellery. So hopefully I'll give you some ideas about where you might want to invest some money. And not all of this stuff is expensive. And what I'm hoping to help you decide is actually, where can I spend that money to get the biggest benefit to an improvement in my photography? Because so little of it is actually the equipment. It's more about planning in advance, editing your photos, and giving yourself the time to practice and learn. Because when you set your first stone, I bet it didn't go well the first time. You've all set how many stones in your lifetime, and now you're getting better at it. And it's the same with the photography. So yeah, we're going to be working through, we've got some lovely materials here that will hopefully help. Please do take notes as we're going. And I'll try and point out some key tips and tricks, particularly with smartphone photography as I'm going along. Most of it doesn't matter if it's a smartphone or a camera. So most of this workshop, it doesn't matter what you're using, it will apply for both. There's just a few tools that are specific to smartphone photography that I'm going to call out. Okay, and I'll try and take some questions at the end. So, and I'll leave all this set up so you can come and have a look afterwards. But yeah, so let's get going. So when starting to think about your smartphone photography session, what I always like to get people to sit down and think about is what kind of photography you're actually going to do. If you want to try and come to it and say, well, I need packaging shots and I need close-ups and I need lifestyles and I need flat lays, that's a big list. And what I would say is try and come to every session, and it might be 2 hours, it might be half a day, it might be a full day, you might have a whole week, but every session, understand what kind of shots you're wanting to take. Because if you're doing a few close-ups and then you move to flat lays and then you move to something else, you're not getting the benefit of the time. You're having to change the lights, you're having to play about with the different angles. It's always better to say, I am just going to take close-ups of all of my jewellery today. And if that's all I do, that's great. If I have time, I'll maybe take a few lifestyle shots and things like that. But it's really to understand what kind of photography you need. And what I say is, when you're starting, you need close-ups. They can be white background or they can be not in the high street style styled, but you need close-ups. The customer needs to see what they're going to get. It's also really nice to have a packaging shot, because as Jess was saying in the last session, it's that value add and being able to demonstrate. I mean, how many of you have spent hours creating your gorgeous packaging? Hands up. So you've spent all this time getting all these beautiful boxes and everything like that. You want to share that with the customers and let them know how they're going to get their jewellery. The next one I would say is nice to have as you're building, so you don't need to have all these jewellery types straight off the bat, is model shots. So with jewellery, the scale can look very different from when you're taking those close-ups of tiny little stud earrings and actually what they look like on. And whilst taking shots with a ruler and everything like that does help, a lot of people like to see the scale of jewellery. So I kind of say, if you're trying to prioritise your shots, that's kind of the order to go in. You need a close-up, you need some packaging, then the next one I would say is model shots so that you can show the jewellery off. You need to understand where you're going to use them. So file sizes make a big difference. So if you want to be in Vogue, if you want to be in any print, you need those at high resolution files at 300 dpi. They will not take them if they're lower. And that's the downside to smartphone photography. Unless you've got the brand new iPhone 14 Pro, which I don't, those file sizes aren't going to be big enough. So your smartphone photos are absolutely fine for selling online. You can possibly get away with them on business cards, which are small, but you're not going to be able to use those files in print. So if you have ambitions of wanting to go into print, that's where you maybe want to start thinking about looking if you've got somebody who can take photos on a camera or getting a small number of high resolution photos taken. But your smartphone is perfectly adequate for your website and socials. So yeah, if you want anything printed, you need to have high resolution files. That the smartphones, they will catch up, they're catching up fast, but they're probably most people's phone at the moment isn't quite there. You need to understand what format you want them in. So I like to shoot either horizontal or portrait. So horizontal is great for banners, for newsletter banners and headers, sections on your website and things like that. Product shots tend to be square, but if you shoot at this angle, you can crop to square very easily. For stories, it's portrait. So again, you want to set up the shot in portrait, but check the crop for square in case you want to use them for the product shots. And that's the way you can take one photo, but crop it in different ways so you get the biggest bang out of the buck in terms of your time and editing and everything like that. But your biggest decision is, do I want to take the shot that way or that way? And that basically, that's the way you hold your phone. Yeah? And, you know, Instagram has typically, historically been square crop, but you'll see that most of it is now moving more to that portrait. So it's important to take a mix of shots, horizontal and portraits, because they do different things for your brand. The other thing to start thinking about is your brand colours and what kind of vibe you want the photographs to have. Because at the end of the day, whilst your photographs do help sell your jewellery, as Jess said, communication with your customers is really important. And a big way of doing that is with your photographs. So doing a bit of thinking about your brand and the kind of aesthetic you want to achieve can be really helpful. And you can start with your brand colours. And what I would say is if you've got really bright, vibrant brand colours, most colour palettes have a few more neutral tones. So you might want to either really lean into your brand colours and have those images look really different, or you might want to keep your actual imagery more natural and neutral and add in your brand colours through your props, adding in your packaging and things like that, and just have pops of the colour. If done really well, really leaning into your brand colours can look amazing, but it can take a little bit of time to kind of get your head round all the intricacies. And so what I say is start simple, and when you get a bit more confident, you can get a bit more extravagant with the styling and the colour palettes. And most people, if they're starting out, I say stick to neutrals, because even then, if you lean into a more dramatic style, those neutral shots will still work for your brand. And you want, you know, if you love those shots, you're still going to be able to use them. So I want you to think of the questions that we've got. So we've got, what are your brand colours? So what kind of colour palette would you use? What props might you use? So props are really important, but not important. A lot of people get very hit up with what props should I use? And again, keep it simple to start with. You may want to use a tile or a tray or just something just to add a bit of layer and depth to your images. But I see too many people get tied up in knots with and just have everything in. And what I would say is keep it simple, take things out, and just keep your styled shots really simple until your confidence grows. But you can see on the next page, there's a lot of different examples. I've got some examples here where I've got a wood background, I've got fabric, I've got a little jewellery dish. I'll leave all this set up so you can come and have a look. But you can keep it really simple, but think about your brand. So if you have a very geometric, edgy brand, you're probably not going to want to use fabric. You're going to want to use angled edges and just keep it really clean. If you've got a beachy vibe to your brand, you're maybe going to want to include sand, which is why my light tint's a little bit sandy, or you might want to include props that make sense with that brand, like shells and driftwood and things like that. So you know your brand better than anybody else, and it's a matter of digging down and understanding what story it is you want to tell, because that will really help you. And you'll see in the booklet on this page, I've created a mood board template for you. Now, I think this should be available as a template that you can use in Canva if you want to just use a template. But you can upload your images, inspiration images, and really start to analyze them and try and unpick what it is about that image that you really like. Is it the fact that it's got clean edges? Is the lighting soft and neutral, or is it really dramatic with shadows? What are the color palette that you're being drawn to in your inspiration images? And what are the kind of props and things that are in there? And by unpicking, what are the shooting angles? By unpicking the images that you really love, either of your own brand or somebody else's, you can really learn a lot in terms of the type of photography that you want to create. So I really recommend going through that exercise if you're struggling with props. When you need them for. So, with some images, you're going to want to take very little. You're going to be so close up in the product, and others you're going to have more going on in the periphery. How many images are you hoping to get? So when you're planning your time, how many images you need, that will kind of dictate how long you need for your session. And then what pieces you're going to be shooting. So I've created some templates to help you in the booklet. And as I said, I think this is available as a Canva template if you want one that's blank. But doing that prep up front can really help in terms of take the stress out of a photography session and really help you have a plan. Jess said you need a plan for your business. You need a plan for your photography sessions. So if you want to take a couple of minutes just to think through, maybe chat to the people next to you about the types of colours, the types of props, even just where you are with your photography, and get some notes down on paper that you can take away, think about. And then it'll be great to get some feedback about kind of this kind of planning area and what the areas are that you're struggling with most. So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to fill that in, chat through, and then we'll see how you get on. So how did we get on? Is planning something many of you have actually done? Have many of you done this process and thought about it? Have you just started setting up and taking photos?
Yeah.
Does it feel a little bit less stressful to actually think about this up front before you go and start taking photos?
Yeah.
So what kind of props and backgrounds did you kind of come, what kind of things did you chat about?
I kind of use mostly natural stuff, so I'll try and use a very light background to have the reflection, and if I can get a bit of shadow in there, I try and do that. And
I'll talk about how you do that later.
But yeah, so I try and keep it quite natural, and then I mess around with it in Canva later and
do
other things with it.
Yeah, and that's what I would say is, always edit your photos, even if that editing is cropping and brightening a little bit. It's really important just to get that consistency across your images. The lighting can change. We'll see the light today change as the course of the day runs through. So you will need to do some basic tweaks. And probably the biggest mistake I see people is not editing their photos. The angle's fine. The lighting generally would have been great. It's just a matter of just doing that final finessing. Think of editing as polishing. You would never send a piece of jewellery out to a customer without having it polished, and editing is just that final little bit of polishing. So yeah, always edit your photos. And I'll talk a little bit about some tools you can use to edit your photos quite quickly on your smartphone towards the end. Anybody else want to, any light bulb moments, anybody want to flag anything that kind of, yeah?
You just said about the lighting during the day. What's the best lights to use?
Okay, well, I'm going to be talking lots about light in a second, but light is light. There's really no right and wrong. Most of us jewellers use natural daylight. So in that case, you need to take your stuff close to a bright window or door so that you can get as close to that light source as possible. Every lighting type has its upsides and downsides. With natural daylight, the main problem is its variability. It changes. So the light at 10 o'clock in the morning is very different to the light at 12 p.m. midday. And that's where I'm going to talk to you a little bit about shaping and modelling that light to try and combat that. The other type of light is continuous light. So we've got a lovely example here of a continuous light. And a continuous light is a light that is probably easiest for people new to photography to use. You plug it in, you switch it on, it stays on until you switch it off. And some of the newer lights, like the ones here, you can actually turn up how bright and and I like that because I like being able to control the light. So when I started product photography, you could only just have one bulb and you could have it on or off. All the new lights, you can kind of ramp it up and ramp it down. So at 5 o'clock when the light is dying, you can just turn it up a little bit and it looks exactly the same as it did 2 hours ago. But the downside to continuous lights is sometimes it's not strong enough. And that's where when people are asking me what lights to buy, I would say try and maximise using natural daylight until you can buy 2 or more lights. So 1 light is good. More lights is better, because what that means is you can move the lights around, and usually the optimal, if it's really dark, you would have 1 on either side, a bit like the diagram in your booklet, and then 1 over top. And what that does is it just gives you nice, even, round light. It means you can add more light and take light away as you need it. So if you are considering buying lights, I do say try and at least get 2, because then what you'll find is you kind of are in a good space for a while, but then you just need a bit of extra light, and that's where just having more lights can be helpful. In terms of lights, as I said, I like the ones that you can turn up. So I've brought in an example. I haven't put it on because I would blind you all, but that is an example of an LED panel. You can get much smaller ones. So this is an example of a smaller one that can kind of go on the tabletop and things like that. You can get little light stands that go on the tabletop with lights so that you can raise them up and move them down. Having that flexibility to move the light is really, really helpful with jewellery, because just sometimes you need to move the light, and as soon as you move the light, it all just looks better. I'm not a big fan of the light tents with inbuilt lights for that reason. Whilst they're great if you've not got a lot of space, you can't move the lights. If you need to diffuse the light, you can't. I much prefer to have just a basic light tent like this and external lights that I can lift up, I can put down, I can turn up, I can switch off. The downside is they take up a bit more space. So you can get little tabletop ones. I think this light tent is from eBay. I like this one because it folds to the size of a portfolio and you can shove it behind the sofa, rather than the pop-up ones that you can't ever get back down again. And what this does is it diffuses the light. So I talked a little bit about light changing, and if you're finding that you're getting a lot of reflections in your jewellery and you're getting a lot of glare from the lights, you need to soften that light. So if you think about it, on a very hot sunny day, the light's much harder and harsher than on a kind of overcast day, because the clouds are acting as that diffusion material. This is what the light tent does. It stops the reflections from your kettle and the doors and the windows in your house, and it just softens it a little bit. And so if you find you're getting a lot of dark reflections, just adding this diffusion, you can make one of these with tracing paper. This one was about £30 and you got a pair of really rubbish lights with it, which I haven't used. But this is really helpful for people that just have a small amount of space, that want to create a little station for their photography that just diffuses that light. And you can use this with natural daylight, you can use this with lights. It really doesn't matter. But it's about, as I said, shaping that light. And what that does is it just softens the light and blocks out a lot of the stuff that's around about that could cause unwanted reflections in your jewellery. Matte jewellery is a bit easier to photograph than shiny jewellery, because you don't get as many reflections, which is why all my jewellery was matte. So just It's a design feature. So something like this is really helpful. If you've got a big window, you can put tracing paper, you can get specialist diffusion material, which is kind of pretty much like this, in rolls that you can kind of tape up onto your window and things like that. Or some of these voile blinds are great just to soften it on a really bright day. If you're using natural daylight, you kind of have to be a bit more strategic with when you're shooting than if you're adding lights. The reason I say that is in June at about 10 o'clock, the light's already really hard. In December, it takes about 12 o'clock and you might get some daylight. So you kind of have to plan ahead when it comes to shooting with natural daylight. I still love shooting with natural daylight. It has a beautiful quality to it, and it's free, which is always great. But you do sometimes get funny colour casts. Have any of you had those blue colour casts? Yeah? That's daylight. Daylight is blue, the sky is blue. So when you're using natural daylight, you often get a blue colour cast. Very easy to fix in editing. It's just a little slider, you take down the blue. Or if you've got warmer light, you will get maybe an orange or magenta casts. And that's all caused by the colour of light. You want to try and control your light as much as possible. This is a probably example of the worst possible light you can have because you've got multiple different light sources. You've got the natural daylight, you've got, don't know what kind of lights these are. We've got, these are probably 5,600 daylight calibrated, maybe 5,500, calibrated for daylight. So you've got lots of different light sources, and that's when sometimes the cast on your photos can turn out a little bit murky. So you've switch the overhead lights off. You're cutting out one of those contaminants in terms of light source and try and keep the lighting as pure as possible. In terms of other options for lights, there are, you can get them with these kind of bodies that you can then attach light tents onto. Again, they take up a lot of space, so you might not have room for that. So what I would do is I would look at how much space you've got, how little do they pack up. That's why I've brought this light, because it packs up into a tiny little case and can go in a cupboard. This light was about £120. You can get kind of older versions of that for kind of 150. You can get 2 of them and things like that. So it's worth having a good shop around for lighting, and whether or not you want tabletop lights or whether you want the full size lights, so that you can, it really depends on your studio and your space. But what I would say is if you are going to invest in lights, try and save up and buy 2 or more, because I think that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of being able to have that flexibility, because I think you'll start to get frustrated with just one light. Does anybody have any questions about lighting? Yeah.
I don't want to advertise, but in Cooks and Gold you can buy this. It's basically for background whites and close-ups. The kind of
gem something or other.
Yeah, and you just attach in.
Yeah.
How is that?
So is it the box?
Yeah, it's like it's been phone on the top.
So I've used it, and I quickly stopped using it because, again, I couldn't control the lighting. So when I'm shooting on a white background, I either tend to backlight, because I don't just shoot jewellery. So the light's going at the back through diffusion material. I usually use frosted acrylic, and I basically blow out the background. Or you light the background so that you're blowing that out, and then you light the product separately. So sometimes it works, and sometimes you can get away with it. But if you're not able to edit the photos properly afterwards, that's where it can be kind of tricky. And what you sometimes find with those light boxes is it really flattens gemstones. Have you ever found that where, you've got these gorgeous, vibrant gemstones, but putting them under an artificial light really flattens them. And so I find that sometimes with them. So It's, again, you've got to decide, and sometimes the good thing about Cooksons is they have these up and you can actually test them before you buy. So I would always say, if you can, test these things before you buy them. You know, it might be if you go along to IGL, they'll have some of these things. If you know another member of Jewellers Academy that lives locally that has one of these things. But I'm not the biggest fan of those because, again, it's not going to help you with any other type of photography. It's really just the white background photography. And I think as you can take a decent white background shot without those boxes and just, you can remove the background. I prefer Photoshop but a lot of people use Canva. It just sometimes eats into your image because of the algorithm. But there are lots of other editing tools that you can use to kind of really help that. Or you send them to an editor on Fiverr and get them to cut them out. Yeah? Any other questions about light? Yes?
Not a question, but a light bulb moment. Buy a big white t-shirt.
Yes.
Nothing more tedious than editing out pink dots.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But one thing you might want to think about is reflectors. So as I said, shiny things reflect everything. And that includes the camera, which is probably black. It will reflect you. Again, make your designs mattes and then you don't need to worry about it. But reflecting and hiding all these things. So I will quite often cover up my tripod and camera. I use foam board because it's cheap. I can cut it up. I can prop it up with whatever I need, and then you're not getting those black reflections. If I'm putting my camera close, I will cut a hole in foam board and put it over my camera, just so that I'm not, and that also blocks out me. So yes, reflections are tricky, and that's where quite often I will have a reflector here and I'll have a reflector on the other side, and literally there's just a hole for the camera, so that you are managing those reflections. The light tint will help, but you will, this one's open, you will still need something to reflect your kitchen, your studio, whatever else is going on. So absolutely, and shoot in white. I have been known to change my clothes when I'm shooting just so that I'm not, or putting a sheet up to cover my background so that I'm not reflecting me and anything else into the images. Any other points? Yes?
Just a question, you said about choosing lights. What sort of searches should I be putting into?
Photography lights, LED, I would stick with LEDs now. You used to have old bulbs. I think you can now get units where you can still fit LED bulbs in, but LED panel lights are really quite good. They're calibrated to either 5,500 or 5,600, so you want them calibrated to daylight. With this one, I can actually change that on but I, try not to mess too much with them, and you can turn them up and down. So I would just look for photography lights and look at the reviews, check where you're buying them from. Sometimes Amazon isn't the best place to buy them from, excuse me, because you don't know whether they're coming from, where they're coming from. I like to buy my lights from the likes of Wex, MPB. Essential Photo is really good. They have a lot of different lights. I personally use Godox. They do LED panels, they do LED lights, and things like that. If you want to do any form of video, a continuous light is better. That's why they're using continuous lights today, because you can't use flash with video. So it's worthwhile getting a light that you can use for making your videos and for doing your photography, because again, it's one less thing you have to buy.
Sorry, that was a bit quick. Was that Wex?
Wex, W-E-X,
And then
Essential Photo. Godox is the brand that I use. They do a great video light for about £120 that you can also use for your photography. And they do these panels. Or Newer, N-E-E-W-E-R, is also a well-known UK brand.
MPB, you said as well?
Yes. Yeah, they do a lot of second-hand. So, if you want to save some money, you can quite often find some lights second-hand. And obviously eBay, but obviously with some of these stores I've given you, they check all the equipment before they sell it on, and they know what they're looking for. So, and you've got a warranty usually, whereas you don't if you buy on eBay. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, quick question. Is there ever a need to use, you know, one of the light sources when you're using natural light?
Sometimes. So sometimes what you find, it's usually at the end of the day, as the light is starting to, obviously the sun's coming down, that tends to be where you need to add another light. So quite often I will use natural daylight for this side, and then I'll add a daylight light on the other side. Yeah. So yes, that's where you've got, with every image you take, look at it and kind of say, actually, is the light changing? Do I need to make any adjustments? And either add light, take it away, or modify it using reflectors and things like that. You can also, on your smartphone, just by tapping in most apps, just turn up the brightness of the images. So if you just let the camera decide, it will just go for neutral. But if you want it slightly brighter, in jewellery, if you're shooting a light and airy shot, often looks better if you just up the exposure a little bit, either when you're taking it or when you're editing it. If you have darker backgrounds, you're going to want to underexpose a little bit, because the jewellery, so use your eye as a guide. You all look at a photo and say, I like it, I don't like it. So just look at your scenes as you're taking them and make adjustments and take a shot. And the good thing about a smartphone is you can just take another one if you just make a few little adjustments. So does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Any more before I move on? Yes.
Saying about the lights being 500 or 5,000 or something.
Yeah.
Did that mean? And also in terms, I've got a ring light that's LED, but I mean, where does that stand?
So you would need to go back to where you bought your listing from, and it'll usually tell you. So it's all to do with the colour temperature of lights. There's a big scale, it's called the Kelvin scale, that tells you what the colour of every different light source is. Daylight is about 5,500 to 5,600. So most photography lights will be calibrated in one of those two. So it will say in every listing, this is 5,600K. Or 5,500K. So it'll just be in the listing. So as long as you're looking for a light that says it's daylight calibrated, you'll be fine.
Okay, and that applies to the ring?
Yeah,
well.
so most ring lights will be calibrated to daylight. You just probably need to go back to the listing that you bought it from and just double check. The challenge with ring lights is sometimes you can get that little ring reflecting in the photo. So that's where you maybe want some of this material over that just to diffuse that, so that you don't get that harsh little ring in the gemstones or in the metal. Does that help? Okay, right, so we've talked a little bit about lights, and we've touched very briefly on reducing the glare, reducing the shadows and things like that. I mean, a very good tip is, and it's hard, this is a hard light, so we are getting some shadows going, but if you are struggling with shadows, just pop a bit of card in and just see this side lift. So the light will come and it will reflect off of here and it will bounce back onto your piece. So there's a diagram in your workbook for that. So sometimes if you're struggling with the light that you've got, just adding in a bounce card just to lift the shadows can make a big difference. So yeah, I use foam board all the time, cut it up. When it dies, I recycle it and use a new bit. You can get specialist reflectors. I quite like these ones because they stand up and I don't need to be holding them. And these have a kind of black card, a silver card, or gold. You can get a gold one, and then white. And these stand up by themselves. So they can be pretty handy if it's just you shooting and you need an extra pair of hands. These are by Sellens, and they're about £10 each. But obviously foam board's a lot more cheap.
How do you spell Sellens?
Selens. I think some other brands do them. Usually when a brand comes up with something that's really good, other brands copy it. They were from Amazon, so you'll be able to find them on Amazon. Just type in photography reflector. If you want to create hard shadows, so if your brand, you like hard shadows and you like, being able to reflect and get, some nice natural shadows on your piece, that's where you want a hard light. And the difference is, I've talked to you a lot about softening the light and everything like that, but sometimes you do want to add in a hard light. So this is a hard light with nothing on it. This is it diffused. So you basically need a hard light source, and we're getting that today from the light here. And then you can kind of put in, these are called gobos, you can put in things that just cast those reflections and shadows. So you can create these yourself using card. I've obviously got one. Or you can use leaves or anything like that just to create those shadows. But the main thing you need to know is you need to have a hard light. So when I was first starting out, I used sunlight as my hard light. So if you think about light, you're replicating the sun. And to get really dramatic shadows, you want the light source quite high and the thing that is causing the shadows quite close to the piece. If you want it slightly softer, you take the gobo slightly further away. So that's how you create those shadows. And sometimes you have to play about with where you position the light to get those shadows the way you want them. So when you see the rings with those lovely, perfect shadows of the outline of the ring, you need to play about with the positioning of the light to get that. But it's a hard light you need for that. So all the things I've told you about diffusing the light, you kind of want to do that with most of your lights, but you want one hard light source. And as I said, when I was starting out, that was when I used the sun. But the downside is you don't always get the sun in this country, so you can just add an extra light that's unfiltered that will give you that. But that's how you get those shadows. Does anybody have any questions about? No.
What's the name of
It's called a gobo or a cucoloris. This is, if you search on Essential Photo, it's called a shadow caster. So they're quite expensive, is what I would say. You can get them looking like a window, you can get them looking like blinds. I've actually bought a frame off of Amazon that is kind of like a window, and that can be a bit cheaper. Or you can just make them with card. Yeah. So, you know, with everything, there's a cheap way of doing it, there's a nice expensive way of doing it. What else? Okay. So one of the things you're going to want to look at once you're set up. So you've got your setup, you've got your light, it's either natural daylight or continuous light. You're going to want to think about using your camera, so your smartphone. And what I would say is try and use a tripod if you can. So with smartphone, with an actual camera, you can pin focus on the gemstone or the piece of jewellery. With the smartphone, you kind of just have to tap the screen and hope for the best. But when you're doing that, you're moving the camera. And the smartphones are pretty good, but by using a tripod, it gives you another pair of hands, and you can set a timer, let the timer count down so there's no shake, and you get beautifully sharp images. So you can get these little smartphone clamps that you just attach to the tripod, or you can get a little spidery one that you can just sit at the front. I prefer the big one because you can go up and down. You can get smartphone versions of it. I mean, this one was about £20. This is a very cheap travel one. And these clamps are usually about £10. And what that means is you can bring the camera up and down, you can lower it.
Do you want to lift it up a bit?
Yeah.
So we can see better.
And you just clamp your smartphone in. So if I show you, it just kind of springs open and holds your smartphone. And as I said, whatever camera app you're using, whether it's I've got an iPhone, but the native camera app that comes with it, whether it's, I like Camera Plus 2, or Lightroom, the mobile app, which is free and is the editing tool I would highly recommend because it's very easy to use. You can actually now take pictures in Lightroom and then just edit them straight away. So using one of those apps, you can turn up the brightness, you can set a timer and things like that. And that means you can activate the timer, set up the shot, and nothing's moving. You've got your hands free, so you can be adjusting the jewellery and things like that. So just these few pieces of equipment, if you're serious about taking your own photos, I think are a well worth investment. And as I said, you can get little smartphone tripods that cost about £12 that come with a clamp. They're a bit wobbly. This one's a bit more sturdy. But it's definitely a piece of equipment I would recommend you buy. And as I said, if you've got a tabletop, you can buy these little spidery ones that you can kind of attach to things and kind of hold it for you. but it's these little clamps that you're looking for. Other pieces of equipment, some of them come with a trigger. So if you buy a tripod, sometimes they'll come with a camera app and a trigger. When I'm taking photos, I'll quite often use the trigger, because again, as soon as you touch the phone, it moves it, and it takes a couple of seconds to stop moving. So another option is getting a Bluetooth trigger to help take the photo. What else? I think that's everything for the equipment. In terms of setting up, I like this light tent. It's 60 centimetres because it fits all my backgrounds. So you can get photo boards, but you can use papers, you can use fabric, anything like that. And I like to have them set up like this, where I've got a board at the back and I've got a board at the front. Purely because it's black, and actually that black will reflect on your jewellery. So even if you just put a white board at the back, and most of these are white on the back, it means that you're just not getting any black reflections. But I like this because it means that no matter what the angle, I've got background there that isn't kind of whatever else is in my kitchen. And I've got it set up with a little bit of fabric and a little tray. So we've talked a little bit about the styling and keeping it simple. You will pick backgrounds that you will pick backgrounds that fit with your brand. So I've brought a nude, I've brought a kind of sandstone, and I've brought a wood. You will pick backgrounds that fit with your brand. And a lot of dishes, it can look nice to have things to drape on. Earrings, if you're struggling with taking pictures of earrings, draping them off at the edge of a dish can just help them look a bit more like they're going to be worn. Otherwise, sometimes the ear wires don't lie straight and things like that. Shooting angles. So with your smartphone, there are a couple of different shooting angles. The ones I typically recommend are top down, that's called a flat lay, 45-degree angle, so that's kind of looking down on the piece. You can take it to the right or the left. So when you're shooting and it's not quite looking the way you want, just move the camera and just see. So what you'll be looking at is you'll be looking at a scene from up here, but your phone's down here. And so if you're taking photos and it's not quite how you're seeing it, lift the camera up to where your eye is, because that's the problem. But just sometimes moving the camera or slightly up or slightly down can just make a big difference. The other is straight on. So on Instagram, if I post a picture and the pendant is suspended, hands down, about 3 times the engagement than if the pendant's lying flat. So shooting straight on is great, because you can just, again, show how a pendant hangs. Rings straight on, you want to try and take a lot of different angles of rings. You can prop rings up using, sorry it's a bit dirty and mucky, with prop wax. I like prop wax over blue tack, because blue tack just looks really horrible if you don't edit it out. This is clear, so it's not quite as noticeable. It's also a bit more sticky. It's what they use in museums. And you can take rings standing up and things like that. So there's a lot of different tricks that will help you get lots of different angles and play about with the angles. What you'll find is a couple of photo shoots in, you'll kind of get what angles work for your jewellery and you'll naturally use them. But it can be nice at the end of a shoot to try some different angles as well. Once you've got through all of your shot list, all the essential shots, it can be quite nice just to play about with the camera angles, because that's where the creativity comes in. So that's a little bit about shooting angles. Any questions about anything we've covered so far before I move on to editing? Hi.
That natural wood is a board that you
Yeah. It's basically printed boards. I like these because they're just a bit more robust than rolled papers. They last a long time, they're wipeable. I'm clumsy, I spill them. If I'm doing a nice flat lay with a coffee cup, can absolutely guarantee I'm going to knock it over and spill it. These are wipeable, so I really like these. They're also quite easy to, I keep them quite often just kind of stashed in the corner or things like that. So I really like these. There's a lot of different vendors. When I first started, there weren't many vendors at all that sold these. It was largely photo boards, but you can get them now. Sellers do a lot of them. I get a lot of mine from the States on Amazon because they just arrive like any Amazon parcel. But photo boards are really good. Etsy actually have quite a lot of different vendors for these now. So it's worth having a hunt around. You can get reinforced papers, but I tend to find that you have to replace them a couple of times a year because they just get a bit crumpled and they get dirty and things like that. Club backdrops is great for those. If you want, they have a big range of backdrops, but they will print custom ones for you. So if you want a backdrop in your own colours, you can get a custom backdrop printed, which is really nice. But I find these good quality. When you're zooming in, I'm often using... Oops. Don't worry. I quite often find that they can be a little bit pixelated. These are tack sharp, and I'm in pretty close a lot of time with a macro lens, which is very unforgiving on your jewellery. If you ever want to kind of really dig deep into your kind of setting skills, have a look at your jewellery under a macro lens. They were like, oh, that's that saw mark that I meant to saw out. But these are tack sharp, so that's why I like them. But using papers where you've just got a little bit of texture can be really lovely. Fabrics, remember your lint roller, because otherwise you'll spend ages editing out fluff. Yeah, it's really, again, you can spend a lot of money on backdrops, or you can't. You can find things around your house. Flooring, if you've got natural wood flooring, offcuts, which I know most of you will have somewhere, you can use those. So there's lots of different things. So just look around your house. You'll find that actually you've naturally bought a lot of things that you like and that are aesthetically nice. So have a look around your house first and see what you've got. Books can often look nice. Papers, as I said, and just experiment a little bit with your backgrounds and things like that. Okay, editing. So as I said, please, please, please edit your photos. I like to use, yes?
How do you physically hold your camera?
So I have a special tripod called the Vanguard Alta 2 or the Alta Pro 2 or the Manfrotto. It used to be the 55, but they've changed all the numbering. But it's basically, it's got an extension arm. So you take it up and then you kind of bring it down. This one just goes up and down. So quite often do that. Or you would use something like this to kind of attach it and hold the camera straight down. I use a C-stand at home where I have 2 C-stands and I clamp it on there, but obviously you guys aren't going to have that. So yeah, the tripods, that's where having a good tripod is really a worthwhile investment. The Alta Pro 2 I think is about £150, including the head, but it'll last you for ages and it has got that flexibility. With flat lays, sometimes if you're short like me, you either need to shoot up on a ladder, which is a bit dangerous when you've got balance issues like me, or you put the box on the floor. And the good thing about this is you can lift that and take that away and shoot down. What I'll quite often do is I'll put my head here so that I've still got some reflective and then bring that down. So yeah, that's how you do it. You basically get a tripod and you need to put the tripod up quite high because then you get the legs in the way, but it gets overhead. There are some light tents like the Foldio that are designed for smartphones where they've got a hole on the top that you can sit the smartphone on. You can't move that hole, so it's not always massively flexible, but it's fine for smartphones. I've got one of them too, don't worry. When I heard it, I thought it was mine.
I thought I'd silenced everything, clearly not.
Any other questions before I move on to editing? Yes.
Sorry, a quick question. You said when you're thinking about your photo shoot, think about how many photos that you want to get at the end of it. let's say you wanted 10, for example. How many photos would you actually take? Ish.
Me, I would probably end up taking about 100.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I'm editing, I do what's called culling, which I appreciate is harder if you're taking them on the phone. I bring all my photos into my computer and I'm just tap, 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 scrolling through, and I'm going, don't want that one, want that one, don't want that one, want that one. And then the ones that I want are the ones that I edit. So yeah, you want to take a range of angles, because what you don't want is your Instagram to look carbon copy the same. So I like to suggest that people have 2 or 3 setups that they run all their products through, so that, you know, every photo, you're not having 2 photos the same. I actually ran an experiment where I did 2 photos that were the same setup, slightly different piece of jewellery, and the engagement on the first one was really good. The second one tanked, because people on Instagram like variety. So it's good to take different angles and not just be posting the same stuff over and over again. So you're going to want to take, with every ring, I will take it face on. I'll take it to the side. I'll take it to the other side. I'll prop it up. I'll prop it up that way. I'll prop it up that way. And you can do that quite quickly. But you want to take a range of different angles. And what that means is you've just got that variety to choose from. And you just pick the best ones and edit those. But it gives you plenty of choice. But I would say you're probably looking at 50 to 100, depending on whether you get the money shot straight off or whether you just want to try a few different angles.
Yeah.
Every piece of jewellery has a side, and every piece of jewellery has an angle that it looks best at. So if you're making lots of the similar things, you will get that. Where you've got to play about with it a bit more is if they're more unique pieces and one-of-a-kinds and things like that, it can sometimes take a little bit longer to kind of get those angles for those pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, any more before I move on to editing?
Well, silver jewellery, I can't seem to get the silver jewellery to look right.
I've got a trick for that. Yeah, I'm going to cover that. So, editing. So we've talked a little bit about colour casts. One of the biggest things I get from people is, but my jewellery looks yellow. So the power of editing is that you can edit an image globally. So you can make it the whole image brighter, you can make the whole image darker. You can also do that with colours. So you can go and pick a colour, like yellow, and take it right down, and then it looks nice and silver. You've got to watch, because if you've got other yellow things, it also takes the yellow out of there. But in Lightroom, you can either make a change to the whole photo using sliders. So it's really nice and intuitive to use, and it's free if you use the mobile version. And you just play about with the sliders and see what looks good. But you can also add brushes where you can isolate parts of the image and either leave it as it is or invert it, and then remove the colours. So I'll quite often just isolate the gemstone and just ramp up the saturation a little bit, or lift. Sometimes the gemstone is just a bit dark. Well, you can lift the shadows. So on any editing app, you can change the exposure, which is how bright. Some people call it brightness. The contrast, so just how much difference there is between the lights and the darks. You can, what else can you normally change? Saturation. I prefer to change the vibrance. With the saturation, it can just sometimes, it's very easy to get too heavy-handed. With vibrance, it's going to look for the more vibrant tones and just punch them up a little bit. Blacks, whites, shadows, that's it, yeah. So you can play about with all of those things. And so what I would say is, you know, sit with an image and play with it, you know, move it to the very end of the slider and then to the other way, and just see what the difference can make. Every image I do, I will crop. And sometimes that's just, I'm just swiveling it slightly or rotating it. I'm bringing it in tighter. And the more you crop an image, the lower the resolution the image is. So you've got to be careful that you're not going for something really wide and taking it in, because you're looking at, say, a 14 megapixel camera on your smartphone. You can kind of do that a bit more with a 30 megapixel camera, but you can't take in too much. So try and get your scene as close to the way you want it, and then just tweak the cropping. The other thing is, you can on Camera Plus 2 and VCSO on Android I don't think you can do it in Lightroom. It's got macro settings, so you can set it up and you can hit the little flower and it will zoom closer in without you having to get the camera too close. So that's why I like Camera Plus 2, because I don't need to attach a silly little horrible macro lens to my smartphone. I can just do that in the app. And that will kind of do the zooming for you without lowering the resolution. So try not to crop in too much, because the resolution can go down. But yeah, the apps I like to use are Lightroom Mobile, or Camera Plus 2 has an app, and VSCO. The native camera apps editing is also getting a lot better. So it's worth playing about, it's worth trying, but you really want to be able to amend some of the settings. So you want to up the brightness, you want to be able to use a timer. Those are probably the things that are going to make the biggest difference to you. And having an app that you can edit. I don't like the ones that add filters. I think it looks weird. It can change the colour of the jewellery. I prefer to just do the editing myself. But play about with those sliders. You can't do it wrong. You can always just go back and, start again. But play about with those editing settings. But as I said, you want your silver to look at, take the yellow out. Doesn't work with gold, but you can do it with silver.
What was that one, VS?
VSCO is the one I think that works on Android.
Can I just have a little question?
Yeah.
When I try to put mine on white backgrounds,
Yeah.
they all end up really blue. By the time I've edited them, it's changed the image so much because I've tried to change the background. Do you have to? Can you only do that by cutting out
So
Photoshop?
on Lightroom, you can now, in the desktop version, I'm not sure about the mobile version, it's now got this thing where you can select the subject. So I will select the subject and then I'll invert it so that it's just doing the background. And then I'm just changing the colour of the background. So yeah. But you can send your images to an editor. Costs about £1.35. Send an image to get somebody else to cut it out for you. And then you can do what you like. You can get it on a transparent background and put it on a pink background if you want to. So you don't need to do all the editing yourself. Any other questions? Fabulous. Well, thank you so much. I hope that's been helpful. If you do want to come and have a look at anything set up here, please do so. And good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.